Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith. We're discussing politics and especially last night's debate. Before we get off the debate, I want to pose this question. Anybody care to answer, please do. Looking at the debate last night, as I did, it was obvious to me that Mr. Fetterman struggled, especially with some answers on fracking as to one. On the other side of the coin, was it a good means of the debate that Oz took to answer a question and then immediately go on the attack on Fetterman? Just from your guys' perspective as tried and true politicians, how do you think it felt?
It felt
Well,
like
having been in debates, there's all kind of coaching that goes on for hours and days and weeks beforehand. And I think there's some training in, well, make your statement and then go on the attack.
Mhm.
During my time, I don't think I did that as much as other people did. I'd answer the question because I was a lawyer to answer the question, I would. And then I'd make another point. It wouldn't necessarily be negative. I think that Oz would have benefited by doing that instead of continuing to attack all the positions over and over and over again about Fetterman. The points are out there. So I like to see them move on. But I'm a little different type of politician.
you did how many debates, Governor, with Dan Honorado in 2010? You did a lot.
Oh, 5, 6.
Yeah, there were quite a few. And there was the prep work. I mean, our team was doing prep with Dan and your team was doing prep with you. And I'm sure these teams did the prep as much as they could. And they probably suggested to both candidates, Oz in particular, answer the question, but then we need you to pivot to this point or to that point or to this point, because these points in our data are telling us these are effective hits that you need to make to get our numbers where they need to be. So he was doing what he was trained to do, but he was rough around the edges in his attempt to do it. If this had been his third or fourth debate, I still think he would have done it, but he would have been a little more, he would have been smoother at what his tactic was. He was very binary, very two-dimensional. He'd give a quick generic answer or a quick generic deflection on whatever the question was that was posed to him. And then he jumped right onto a talking point, a rehearsed talking point, which made him look even more disingenuous. And folks who may want to drill down a little bit more, those 7% undecided, to see where he is. If the polls are accurate, why has he come so close? What does he really stand for? Well, they came away empty last night because he didn't give us more about what he was versus more attack on the other guy.
Keith.
It was debate prep 101, folks. I mean, you answer the question, you're told to answer the question, but you ought to also put forth those things that you need to talk about, regardless if they come up in the question or not. Listen, you can be critical about it. I'll take my chances. I'd be willing to show this debate to everybody in Pennsylvania. I wish everybody in Pennsylvania could see last night's debate and make their own decision, because if they did, there was nobody with clear conscience that would think that Oz did anything but win that debate outright. But the question is, how many people are watching? Are the undecideds watching? I get all that, but clearly between the momentum that's building for Dr. Oz in the last 2 months and this debate performance last night, which really showed a difference in his ability to lead and to answer questions and to set an agenda for Pennsylvania, I think that 1-2 punch is going to put him in the United States Senate on November 8th.
Okay,
who wins or loses a debate is one very small variable in a very large equation. If it was the one and only factor that one must decide, Hillary Clinton would have been president in 2016, or she would have won Pennsylvania.
I want to move on to something else here. We only have about 2 minutes to discuss it, and that is, of course, the polls, as I mentioned before, are getting very close. 1.3% difference between Fetterman and Oz, according to the Real Clear Politics average of the last 3 or 5 polls. So my question is, this is really within the margin of error. Is this now a toss-up, or is it a case that Oz has been coming on and by election day he could overtake Fetterman? Anybody?
I truly think Oz is coming on. As people narrow it down, he is coming on. But you have to keep in mind, Pennsylvania is a Democratic registered state. There's almost 1 million more Democrats than there are Republicans. And for him to now have this down to 1.3% difference in the total average shows that there's been momentum coming there. You want to be there at the end. You don't want to be there way out, a month ahead of time. And I think that shows momentum. And a lot of times when people go in and they decide at the last minute, they get swept up in the momentum. So we'll see what happens.
We talked about this before, Stacy. The hourglass, you're out here, and oftentimes it'll come in, so the snapshot, assuming they're accurate, they're coming in like this, if that were to continue, you're going to get that. I'd like to see where they are in a week, but traditionally it comes in tight, it hugs, and then it'll come back out. But it could be that. I'd like to see where the polls are a week from now. He's come on enormously, if these are accurate, to get to this point. But as the governor said, our party has a huge registration advantage. And in my opinion, after seeing both game plans and coordinated campaigns, we have a huge party advantage and we have a better coordinated campaign. Josh Shapiro started putting that coordinated campaign together 6 months before he won the nomination. That's how far ahead of the curve he was. And they are doing phenomenal work. So Dr. Oz has a lot he has to push up against with a nominal amount of time left. And I don't think that debate is going to change anything significantly on this hourglass issue.
In recent broadcasts, I always bring up the fact that Pennsylvania is one of the biggest ticket splitting states in the United States. So you have to keep in mind that right now it does not look like there's a real competition in the governor's race. I do believe it's a difficult path for Mastriano. In the end, I believe that the attorney general will secure that seat. All the more reason why the pendulum swings more in Oz's favor because of the ticket splitting behavior of Pennsylvanians. But that, and then what we talked about 5 minutes ago, momentum. Momentum is a real thing in politics. And there was once a very large lead that Mr. Fetterman enjoyed over Dr. Oz, but that has been tightening. And quite frankly, it's been tightening now for almost 6 consecutive weeks. How do you stop the bleeding? Well, you stop the bleeding potentially by a good debate performance last night. That didn't happen. If anything, it might have favored Oz. So there's reason to believe whatever is rolling downhill is rolling down more aggressively. I don't see any situation that's going to change this momentum in the last 2 weeks. I think, again, it's a heavily Democratic state. I always argue it's a light blue state, if not a purple state. But I still believe, I'm pretty confident that we'll enjoy a 2 or 3 point win on election night for the United States Senate. And quite frankly, in a state with the makeup of Pennsylvania, that's a big win.
I want to keep going on this topic in just a moment with one more question, but we do have to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.